Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. This is kind of like the difficult panel, the post-lunch panel, which is always a difficult. It's always a difficult one for the panelists as well as for the audience. So bear with us, please. Welcome also the online participants. Our panel is going to be about human security and multifaceted human security, human well-being in the age of global turmoil. Thank you for your attention. And I have two pieces of announcements to make. One that regards the online participants. So today, your day will end after this panel. So after we are done, oh, yes. So for the online participants, so after this panel, you are off today because the workshop that we have in the program is going to be only for the physical participants. So we will see you back online tomorrow at 10 o'clock, at 9:45, which is the other piece of announcement. Tomorrow, we will, instead of 10 a.m., we will start at 9:45 a.m. Okay, so I wanted to just announce this well in advance so that everybody knows. Okay, and now I would like to announce the panel and the chair of this afternoon's panel, who is Balázs Barta, my dear colleague at iASK, who is also the CEO of Pannon Business Network. So welcome, Balázs, and please have a great time.
Thank you so much, and also thank you very much for the hardcore audience that, such a beautiful day after lunch you are all here. It will be, I know everybody says it will be exciting and the panelists are extremely great, but it's really an exciting topic. We will talk about well-being and security in current times, and I don't want to waste your time. How we will do it is that we will have 15 minutes presentation from each of the gentlemen. I will check on them. Then we have some pre-agreed questions. If you don't mind, very quickly go through that, and then we go for the question sessions. So I'd like to give the floor to Charles to make his presentation.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. So here's my first slide. I'm going to dance around the front here as I do when I normally lecture my classes, and I'm missing class this week, so I'm going to make up for it by dancing around here. So the title of our session is Multifaceted Human Security, Human Well-Being in the Age of Global Turmoil. Who advances the slide? I do? You want me to do that? Oh, that's fine. But I took it upon myself to change the topic slightly, and I guess I'm being punished for that. I'm being punished. It's the right one? Oh, okay. Now it turned, okay. Whoops, let's go backwards. Okay, so this is the title of the session. However, I thought it would be best titled, and you'll see why in a second, Multifaceted Security, Human and Planetary Well-Being in the Age of Global Turmoil. And I'd like to just dispel the myth that it's just about humans, it's about the whole system. And in changing the name, I guess I'm thinking about my grandmother. I think she would have said what I did was semtelen. Is that the word? Yeah. Semtelen vodjes. I think that's what she said. Okay. Let me just start out with an iconic picture. We had a cover story from a large workshop, about 40 people, that we published in Cell Report Sustainability. And this diagram here is a length scale of climate stress from 10 to the minus 6 meters up to 10 to the 8th meter. So from microscopic scales, submicroscopic scales, right on up to the Earth system. and stress response time from sub-seconds, milliseconds, nanoseconds, to ultimately the century timescale. And what we did is we assembled this group of people to talk about what is the impact of climate change. Now, there were people in the audience who were human-centric and said, well, it's all about controlling our use of fossil fuel, mitigating the factors that produce the climate change, and adapting to it. But what we discovered pretty quickly is that when you make a diagram like this, humans might be sitting right here, and maybe some of our societies right there. But whenever you start heating up the climate, everything changes, right down to the genetics of all the other millions of organisms that live on the planet rather than just the humans. And if we're mitigating and or adapting for human survivability, we also have to worry about what's happening to the other many millions of species that we share the planet with. So I just wanted to make that point, and that's why I changed slightly the topic. I also changed the topic because a lot of you certainly are aware of the the Sustainable Development Goals, and maybe the Millennium Development Goals before those. And this was presented about 11 years ago now as a set of 17 objectives for essentially creating well-being for both humans and the planet. And the point I like to make with this diagram is that if your objective is to have a sound and sustainable economy underpinned by a society that has no hungry people, that has universal health care, gender equality, etc., that's a wonderful set of aspirations. But it's hierarchical. You can't have an economy that functions in the long term without this societal underpinning. And guess what's below it? The biosphere. Okay, so I want to sort of split the SDG agenda into something that's quite important. It's look down here and how all of these interactions are basically propelling us in one direction or the other. I go next. Many of you in this room are probably sick of seeing this particular slide, but what I like to do is I like to say that this is the triumph of the exponential. Okay. And if you look at socioeconomic trends like world population, global primary energy use, global GDP, et cetera, it's all going up. So it's shooting up very quickly. And the Earth system doesn't just sit there and take it, it responds. So carbon dioxide accumulates in the atmosphere. So does methane. Ocean acidification is going up because of that. We are also depleting fish stocks in the ocean, et cetera, et cetera. So the Earth system responds to these forcing factors that are all going up quite exponentially. Now, in terms of how to look at this, I guess there's been a dialogue going around the iASK community about looking back at history, and we learn from history. And I did a little bit of work with an environmental historian. We wrote a couple of papers together. And what we see is that humans have this propensity to screw things up, to screw their environment up, and then discover it's not good and then try to fix it, sometimes when it's too late. And that's just the mentality we've had about environmental management for centuries, if not millennia. And we see this going back, through the archives of the American settlement period, when this was really a very fixed style of settling a new continent. And then we can look back even to ancient civilizations where this idea is that we inadvertently ruin the system, but we try to fix it. And it's often very costly to do that rather than prevent the problem from occurring. So when I have some time, and when Ferenc has some time, we're going to finish up a concept note that we're trying to get together. And it's this idea that there's a response gap. And what we're talking about is these environmental or social system forcings that keep shooting up very, very quickly are not met by an equal pace in terms of our responses. And each year that passes by, when you have an exponentially growing curve, unless you're keeping up with it, just say it's flat here, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, that gap. So you have more and more ground to make up if you want to rehabilitate the system. Okay, and that's a kind of a generic concept, okay? Now, as prima facie evidence for this, I'm going to use 3 examples. The first is the global climate change question. And as you all know, we've been trying to come to grips with the climate change question for decades now. The UN's been trying to negotiate treaties around this. Some countries are in, some countries now are out. But there's an inertia in all of this. That's what causes this delay or this response problem. So back in 1975, when I came out of college, we were studying carbon, but it was sort of a new topic. It wasn't part and parcel of the global mentality. It was something a bit in the distant future. I was witness to the early planning of the IPCC with some of the primary movers in that particular domain. And at that point, carbon was 340 parts per million in the atmosphere. Just in those 7 years, it went up 10 parts per million. First IPCC report came out in 1990. It's now up to 355. And then we started negotiating for the Conference of the Parties to actually try to do something, try to mitigate the problem. And we've been talking for literally 30 years. And if you plot up the time here, 30 years since we've been talking about this, and the average carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it's not moving much. Now, some would say, well, it's probably slowed it down. I would argue it hasn't done much at all. We don't seem to be responding to what everyone knows is an existential threat. So there's a great delay, a great response gap in the evidence here in the carbon dioxide climate change question. Another example, just another generic example, is the proliferation of marine dead zones or oxygen dead zones, particularly in the coastal zones where lots of our protein, fisheries proteins come from. Marine plastics are exponentially being marine anoxic dead zones are here. The marine plastics also going up exponentially, and overexploited fish stocks as well, going up and up and up and up. Now, if we want to understand the question before we act on it, that was one of the themes in the last part of our deliberations, you've got to go out and study it. You have to monitor what's going on. And if you look at investments in ocean and climate science, both in terms of the scientific projects and the infrastructure to do it, it's pretty much leveled out. So the knowledge base is kind of flat. And if you look particularly for ocean-bound types of research infrastructure, in many cases, it's actually going down. In coastal and local scale, ship time is one metric to show how the scientists are studying the problem. That's not going up like these curves. It's either going down or flattened out, okay? So I'm just trying to make the point that if these are the existential threats, that's the things that we're worried about, why are we not trying to get the knowledge base to accommodate those changes and do something about it? Now, this one I just did quite recently, and it's kind of the nuclear analog to what we're talking about. And if you look at here, the total nuclear explosive power in millions of tons of TNT equivalent, and these are thousands, from 5,000 to 25,000, and you plot this up from 1950 to the year 2030, a very interesting dynamic happens that I believe has a lot of information built into it that could be a wonderful multidisciplinary effort along these lines. So we did really nothing. The blue line here is representing the explosive power that is covered by treaties. That's actually regulated, so to speak. And we did nothing from 1950 to, I guess, around 1967, 68. And we had the first set of protocols that took us from literally 0% of the explosive power up to nearly 95 or 96% of the coverage by treaties of the entire explosive power of the planet. And from that time, either because of forecasting, worries, near accidents, arguments by the developers of the bomb, some of whom you know are Hungarian, we had this very long-term decrease in this loss. And I put the word crop loss, it didn't transfer correctly. But part of the issue is this may be our ignorance in the first place, what was at stake. This was a proactive, whoa, I shouldn't have touched that. I'm sorry, I can't take that back.
That's the collapse.
It's the collapse, yeah.
The
Yeah.
disruption.
Yeah. Sorry, what you see is the decline in the lethality of the arsenals that we've had deployed. Thank you, by the way. And we've actually made progress. So this is quite different than our generic response gap. And over time, we've made enormous inroads into controlling the system. It's not 100% controlled. And in the very recent past, 2026, the United States has pulled out with Russia of the protocols that actually created this real regulation of a danger to our planet. Now, why is this dangerous? Because if we started firing off these things, all you would need to do is to fire off 5,000 of these units, and that's going to create a 55% loss in crop productivity because of the damage created by cooling and nuclear fallout, etc. And even with a limited nuclear war, it's still a 10 to 30% global crop loss. Again, these are existential issues that we are trying to cope with, and it's unbelievable that we would pull out of a treaty that's served us well for so long. By the way, the difference between these two curves toward the end are those new nuclear states that have not been a part of those treaties. So, backsliding and lost progress. Looks like we're back to where we were. Okay, so some quick conclusions. I think that this response gap idea is apparent. You can call it whatever you like, parenthetically, impair, then repair, looking in the rearview mirror, shoot first, ask questions later. But this mentality produces the collective backdrop of what we're talking about here in terms of the whole conference. But the idealized responses are certainly confounded and certainly determined by the background environment, the technological readiness of parties to negotiate, the socioeconomics, the geopolitical context, on and on and on. And in the spirit of this gathering, that's a quintessential interdisciplinary problem. It's a rich domain for study, and I think what we could probably work on productively together as a group is maybe answering this question. This might be a kind of a chat GPT question we ask ourselves. Could there be typologies along the lines of what I showed that can identify patterns that we could use to formalize the notion of how society is going to be able to respond? And we've seen instances where it's been responding and where it's not been responding. And how about the surprise of foresight? Maybe in all the complicated sets of graphics I showed, maybe the good news is some of humanity had the foresight to begin planning for the future and create treaties and regulations that would not allow us to slip off the bottom edge. So anyway, that's to be continued. I think that's a interesting place for us to put some activity. And for those who want this set of graphics, I give some publications that you can take a look at as well. So there we go. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this. Now we understand why you said, because we had a backstage discussion about the sequence of the presentations, and Charles recommended to start first, and you were absolutely correct with this human planetary approach rather than focusing on a specific topic. What we will have now is a very different angle of how to approach challenges from Ferenc Petruska from Ludovika University. And he's a security expert, also about security policy, so on abstract level, policy level also, an expert of that field. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
First of starting, my lecture, I would like to start with the hypothesis. My hypothesis... I have this very special hypothesis that I think using artificial intelligence during fighting, creating an accountability vacuum, it's a responsibility gap. But I have some argument why we do so. Because during fighting and using in military, it's very, very good for us using artificial intelligence just to accelerate the process of the military. And when you give the task to the artificial intelligence, we give the responsibility with it. And with the responsibility and with the task, we give the control over the artificial intelligence. And it's a very, very risky process, and I will give you, make it clear why is it so. But I would like to give, why do we use artificial intelligence during military process? First of all, the observation, orientation, a decision, and action loop makes AI very quick. When you get the enemy, acquire it, shoot it, this cycle is absolutely quick when you are using artificial intelligence. And it can be the difference between life and death if you use artificial intelligence, and it's very important just to give task to the AI. The second is availability. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without fatigue, without fear. These artificial intelligence-based weapons, autonomous weapons, can do their job. Just think about it. A simple soldier, when during fighting, can lose their shooting practice and shooting exact, can drop by 80% because of the fear, because of the extreme stress on the battlefield. Artificial intelligence has no problem with it. And if you say, Mr. Petruska, say one feature of AI, which is the most useful during the battle, I would undoubtedly show this huge waste of window. What do I mean? Artificial intelligence from the beginning was very good at handling huge amount of rapidly changing data. Why is it important? Just think about it during your academic career, colleagues. When we want to make a lecture, we can upload 5 books, 10 podcasts, several articles, and it can excerpt the main information of that. When we are in the battlefield, in the 15th century, it was not a problem. A commander went up to the hill, see everything, say archers backward, infantry forward, and he was able to check the whole battle. In the 21st centuries, when there are hundreds of thousands of kilometers long front lines, 10,000 of soldiers, no commander is able to check the movement of his and the enemy soldiers. But artificial intelligence can check it, make the best decision during this very, very rapidly changing, among this very rapidly changing data, and make the best decision which is possible, make the best movement of is possible, which is beyond of the possibilities of the mankind. These features are very favorable, but we have to concern about the risk. First risk, the black box effect. What does it mean? The artificial intelligence is so compound phenomena, and I say phenomena and not an item, because artificial intelligence is more than a simple item. And now we are not really able to say how it collects the data, where it collects the data, and how the whole evolution process is going on now. And during the battle is the question of life and death, and we don't know the process. Second, the distinction, discriminatory failure. In the 20th century, most people in the battlefield, the soldiers, were uniform. Just to make difference who is the protected person and who is my enemy was really simple. but we are in the 21st century. We are fighting hybrid warfare. There are so many people, which is unclear by the Geneva Convention, who is he or who is she. It's even for us very hard to decide if he or she is an enemy or not. And it's very hard even for the artificial intelligence to make distinction. Last one. These systems are studying, but not like man or the mankind studying. And the learning process is absolutely different. It can occur that some inefficient, absolutely meaningless procedure will ignite them to attack. It's very, very risky. And what can we do? Let's see the solution. First of all, everybody is using, okay, we have to use artificial autonomous weapons, and which has the system of in the loop or on the loop. What does it mean? In the loop means the whole process is supervised or controlled by humans. Very, very rational decision. But think about it. When there is an asymmetric warfare, when I'm much stronger than my enemy, I have time to step on, to supervise. But one will happen when the warfare is symmetrical. My enemy is as strong as me. Probably, if I supervise the system, I will lose my life because he is using an out-of-the-loop system when the whole process, targeting process, is automatized. Okay? So it's pretty risky. Let's do the second thing. Geneva Convention, additional protocol, paragraph 36. What does it say? It says that any kind of weapon used during the battle can be fitting the law of armed conflict. I can spell 3 basic rules. For example, the rule of distinction. I always have to distinguish who is my enemy and who is a protected person, which is a protected object, and which are the military objective. And I can just fight the military objectives and the combatants and spare the others. Second, proportionality. I need to use just as many military power, which is sufficient to my military goals. Humanity. I can attack my enemy, but we don't able and must not use unnecessarily suffering. And in this case, all these features, all these principles should fit in when you are using the artificial intelligence, and it's test to the ethics and by design, that these rules, this algorithm should be inserted to the law of armed conflict. So any kind of artificial intelligence or autonomous weapon should be fit to the law of armed conflict. And we should create a responsibility level. The first is, what do I expect from the government, from the state? It has to make and create and release absolute clear rules. The second is the developer responsibility. What does it mean? The designer of those autonomous weapons have to fit the law of our conflict from the beginning. And the last one, how should we use as military personnel? We have to fit and use it in accordance with the law of our conflict. But the problem is the following. As I told you, AI is not a tool. AI is a phenomena, a time-changing, groundbreaking phenomena. And it can be used as a dual-use item. What does it mean? If we are using it peace building, it's excellent for us because it can warm us when there will be in a near future a conflict, or there is a sign of hate speech or propaganda or any aggression. But at the same time, the same tool, the same kind of artificial intelligence or large language model can be used just for spreading the propaganda or spreading hate speech, or just for prompting hate speech. So just take a look at these two sides of my rehearsal. These are the left side, the technical supremacy, the main cognitive dominance of artificial intelligence, everything which is favorable for us. But we have to we take care of the responsibility gap. And in most cases, we don't have to go to battlefield just to see the disadvantages of artificial intelligence. For example, asymmetric proliferation without kinetic warfare. Kinetic warfare means when you are using weapons. Kinetic warfare, the democratization of the large language models and capabilities can be used with non-state factors which can misuse artificial intelligence. Second one is the prompt engineer creating hate speech and using it as a weapon. We don't need troll farms anymore. In the internet, there are more AI-generated text than human-written text. Think about it. Artificial intelligence needed it just 3 years, and the whole mankind needed 10,000 years to write less. I am 100% sure that in a couple of years, we will suffer from a lack of human-written and credible text. We don't know about it, but we are facing in it. And it will be not the lack of information we are facing, just to get the valuable information because of, among this noise. And the last one, with open access paradox, that we are absolutely, this open access like Llama is widely spent and it can be misused by different factors. So I wanted to show you some photos how artificial intelligence collecting data just to make the best decision. It can be sentinels, drones, and stuff like this, and choose the best unit, the best soldier for the action. And it can harmonize the using of so many different weapons, which is the best sources, the proper amount of ammunition will be at the best place, at the best. And I would like to take some conclusion. And the conclusion is the following. First of all, I would like to emphasize that we must acknowledge that AI is inevitable. However, its military application must be normative. It's not if, but now. Stability over superiority. We must prioritize strategic stability through adherence and international law rather than pursuing the blind technological prosperity, what we are doing now. Public and parliamentary oversight of autonomous assets ensures legitimacy and resilience. And last, ultimately, human-centric AI is not just an ethical preference, it's a sustainable digital peace building. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ferenc. Before I give the floor to István, we would never share a floor if there's no iASK winter school, yeah? I mean, a humanoid robot researcher, a planetary researcher, a military researcher, now a medical doctor. We are so different with the background. And what we will talk about is human security and what we mean by democratization of AI. Yeah? For me, it was astonishing to see what you mean by democratization to AI compared to what I mean by that. It's so important. It's so important to learn each other's language. Now I'd like to give the floor to the most frequent panelist of the university. István, please take the floor.
Thank you so much. Yes, this is a continuation of the previous panel. I touched a little bit on it already. And yes, I will talk about the use of AI for an opposite reason, to save lives and increase security of people, patients, as a doctor, and how I see why I think AI will increase our security as patients. And that's why I'm so excited about it as a doctor. So as a doctor, I've spent my life on developing different technological breakthroughs, and was part of the revolution of the genomics and then now AI. And I'm also a founder of a medical technology company, and I'm just very excited to be here and to really see the other side of these technologies, the human side and the aspects of humanity. And so the first revolution that is undergoing in medicine and oncology, where we use AI to increase security of our patients, is in machine learning. So that type of AI, when we train AI to recognize images, that was the first use. And actually it's really astonishing that FDA has already approved more than 1,000 AI-based medical devices. So if you think about AI can be a medical device. And for example, some examples that, for example, this is a AI that recognizes a polyp in the rectum of a patient during colonoscopy. So the gastroenterologists have to review the wall of our gut and see the tumor growing. And we know that colorectal cancer is one of our leading cause of death. It's number 2 actually in both men and women. And it always starts with a benign tumor that can be recognized by colonoscopy. So we can practically 100% prevent colorectal cancer because it needs 10 years to grow. So if during that 10 years, if you go to the doctor and it just during colonoscopy removes this tumor, we are also free again for another 10 years. It's just amazing opportunity. And, but of course, it matters if this is in the morning or in the afternoon, how it's also for the doctors the same thing that under stress and fatigue, their performance changes. And that can be also a life or death situation for us if the doctor recognizes our growing polyp or not. And this is just amazing that it's just, I think it gives us a peace of mind that there is also a co-pilot now together with the doctor who just appoints the attention, draws the attention of the doctor to a very tiny little tumor growing in our belly. And so that was actually approved by the FDA, this system. So it's integrated in the video system of colonoscopy, and it's FDA approved based on clinical trials that actually show that the precision is growing and more tumors are recognized by the doctor. The second picture is a mammography, the same thing, that the doctor has to recognize the presence of the tumor on the mammography picture. And again, this system, in radiology, typically there is a system where 2 radiologists have to review every picture, and if they disagree, then the 3rd radiologist have to come in to decide if there is a tumor or there isn't a tumor. Now, but today we have AI system approved to replace one of the doctors. So it's always an AI and a doctor reviews all the pictures, and if they agree, that's done. So it basically, we need much less radiologists, and also radiologists have to work much less. And again, it just equalizes our chances that we get the best performance in our diagnosis. So again, that was one of the message I wanted to make, that what we really want to know, if we go to our doctor and we take a mammography or a colonoscopy, that our chances that our disease will be diagnosed should be the same wherever we go. It's in Szombathely or Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, we should have the same chance to be diagnosed. And the great thing is that these AI co-pilots are very easy to access, and it's very it's a technology that is very light. It is easy to implement and can also decrease inequities in medicine. That's the great thing about it. And also in pathology, there's another field where and I've always admired pathologists, histologists who are making life and death decisions, whether there is a cancerous cell on the picture or not, if you think about it, and make a right diagnosis. And if I always tell the story that if it's an oval cell, it's a different kind of cancer if it's a flat cell. And you will get a different type of therapy based on the oval or the flat. And of course, there are a lot of cells that are between. So basically, whether you get the right treatment or not, it depends on somebody you don't meet as a patient, is the pathologist. And then you get the right treatment or not, and then you just think that the drug didn't work. But it was not the drug that didn't work. It was your diagnosis was wrong. And this is so undervalued and underrated side of medicine, the diagnostics. Although we all watch Dr. House, and so we should know that that's the most important part, because once you know the diagnosis, it's easy to make the right treatment decision. So this is the great part. And on the other hand, of course, I already mentioned that there is a revolution in drug discovery processes. Now, if you go to the treatment, and I really apologize for this picture, because I just really want you to see the enemy and get angry that this is what we want to stop, cancer. And this is just unbelievable that an 8-year-old child, and this is a picture of a breast cancer of an 8-year-old girl, and that's just terrible. But the good news is, on the other side, is the result of a targeted therapy 1 month later that really made the tumor go away. And this is just a beautiful example. It was actually a case presented at the Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital. So they did the molecular genomic analysis of the tumor, and they could identify the 3 genomic alterations that drive the growth of this tumor. And it's just, I usually show this case to students, to biologists and doctors, that now we are in an age when we can treat cancer based on our understanding the cause. And it's just beautiful that biology and medicine really reached now are fused together. And for example, TERT, just one example, is a gene that's responsible for immortality. That elongates the telomeres at the end of our chromosomes to rewind the biological clock, so the cell can live forever. So it is only active during embryonic development, and then it's switched off. So that's why we have limited lifespan. But the tumor learns how to switch it back on and become immortal. So we are at this level of understanding of biology. Just as an example, and I would love to talk about all the other genes, but I maybe would be shut off by our chair. But so the excitement thing is, and this is where another use of AI can help us, how to make sure that all children on Earth and all patients benefit from this knowledge, amazing knowledge. That's the question. Do we benefit all? Because we were discussing about our vision in iASK, and I was just telling my colleagues, I really loved the vision statement of St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, where I worked for 5 years, and they said that no child should die at the dawn of life. If you think about it, what a powerful vision this is. And we can all agree. Now, the challenge is that if we send the same molecular genetic data of the same patient to 2 different molecular tumor boards, scientists in 2 different university centers, and ask them which therapy they would recommend to this patient individually based on our understanding of biology, the responses will be not the same. So actually the concordance between University of Heidelberg and Berlin is 44%. So if you send the same question, they agree in 44%. Of course you start to think, okay, that's interesting, but who is right? I mean, I want to go to the cancer center or university where people are smarter. Because we suspect that also these treatments, they recommend either good or not. And our worst fear is actually justified because the outcomes reported in precision oncology, choosing the right targeted based on the molecular profile, varies between 0% and 67%. So in one center is 0%, in the other is 67%. You just want to know which one, which of course you would. And the reason behind this ambiguity and inequality in performance is a mathematical problem that we realized in the past decades that basically each cancer harbors not just one genetic alteration, but on average 5. But this doesn't seem to be a big problem, but the problem is that there are 700 cancer genes and 6 million different types of mutations, and each tumor has a combination of 5. And so that's why doctors have this ambiguity and disagreement which out of the 5 to target. So in medicine we use evidence-based medicine as a methodology since the 90s to make sure that we make our decision based on scientific evidence and statistical evidence when we compare treatments between groups within the same type of patients, so patients who are similar, whatever similar means, you can sense the problem. And then, but if we want to compare all treatment options in patients who share the same combination of mutations, I made the math, we'll need 14.4 million years to do. So that's where I think we need an out-of-the-box solution. That this is where AI comes in, and this is what we are working on. And of course, the question is what type of AI we can use, and the type of AI we have to use is not the type we used for radiology, the machine learning, because we have a dimensionality problem with it, but we have to use a reasoning engine, a strategic engine, actually used in military, I'm looking forward to discuss, is to reason out what's the, bless you, what's the right decision. We have to make a quick decision which gene we attack. And it's a very strategic decision. It's very similar, actually, to a chess game. So in 1997, this is when we first heard about AI, when Deep Blue won against Kasparov. So that's the way I also tell my audience in the US is that, of course, the Russian guy was playing the right way, although the American opponent was cheating, looking at the computer, obviously, and obviously the guy who used the computer won. We are not surprised. So the question is, can doctors use a computer and cheat and to make the right move against our cancer? And I think yes, this is what we work on in my research team, a computational reasoning system we published in 2021. And what we proved in collaboration with the Institute of CUNY, that we can improve the treatment decisions by 4-fold and now achieving 69% accuracy in choosing the right targeted therapy. And also last year we showed here in Hungary based on data, 5 years follow-up data of lung cancer patients, that actually patients who received targeted therapies supported by this AI model had 5 times higher chance to survive 5 years. So basically now, metastatic lung cancer patients who get a targeted therapy supported by this model have 30% chance to survive 5 years. I translate this, what I want to believe in is that now we can give chessmate to cancer in 30% of cancer patients. It's amazing already. And this is just on the big database analysis that actually we could find such therapy for 75% of our patients based on the Memorial Sloan Kettering database, although only 38% receive such, even in the US. And just to wrap it up, so what I believe is that AI will be here extremely transformative, not just by providing equal access to the highest probable care. So the most important thing is that all cancer patients should access the benefit of science today the same way. So we all should get the mathematically best therapy that's theoretically available today by science, but also we have to accelerate cancer research and reduce the 14 million years to 14 years, hopefully. And also what I said in the previous panel, it should also mean that we reduce the prices of drugs. That's another issue. I don't go all this. And just some good news to the end and some goals and where we want to go. Just few weeks ago, the American Cancer Society announced the latest statistics that now in the US, on average, 70% of cancer patients diagnosed with cancer actually survive 5 years. Of course, metastatic lung cancer is not that, but in overall, that's amazing. And we have seen a reduction of mortality 34%. So science is winning, and the public should know about this. This is one of the topics we also discuss and I ask, that we have to communicate this to the public, that science is saving lives. I mean, they should know. But upon the problem, of course, we also know in the US that in large cities who are treated in large cancer centers still, although there are various, they vary in success, but still on average, they have 9% higher chance to survive cancer compared to treated in the countryside, in small hospitals. And also there are also differences across countries and regions, and Hungary, we are not at 70% yet, and we only reduced mortality by 10%, not 34%, so why? Why? It shouldn't, but there's no reason for why not. Should we also reduce by 34%? And this is what I really want to focus on the next years. We plan a concrete action by introducing AI in Hungary, in Szombathely, and in parallel, we introduced the AI system in the Institute of Oncology Budapest at the same time to show that the most advanced technologies can be applied simultaneously at the large cities and the smaller cities and everywhere, and all patients can access the latest technology at the same time. The same vision was foresighted by CancerX. CancerX is a public-private partnership program initiated by the White House, is the previous White House, the Moonshot program, using digital technologies to reduce inequities in healthcare, and also Mayo Clinic platform built an AI platform to make AI technologies available for half of humanity. So they are very modest, so they only plan to reach half of humanity. And we work also together with the International Cancer Patient Coalition, who have the same goal. So we are embracing for a bright future, and our doctors will use AI to make sure that they choose the best treatment of us and make our treatment the safest possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, István. So I told you that I admire you that there's sunshine outside, you come inside. Then we learned we are doing nothing to be cooked. We can be killed by weapons, and I haven't gone to colonoscopy 2 years ago when I should have. So I'm very worried looking at you, János, what you will speak about. And in case somebody wouldn't know you, you are the living panel of this topic because you are the UN University Institute for Environment and Human Security funder. So thank you so much for being here and sharing your view. Yes,
thank you very much. I always like to make parties, but as much I like to spoil parties, and unfortunately it will be likely to be spoiling the party, though it is bad enough. Okay, so let me start, and I promise you I won't talk about artificial intelligence. I will be much more fundamental on issues on human security, and we have to broaden the paradigms. Human security has several definitions, and I resort to the one in 1994 done by the UNDP, not so much because I believe it is a better one, but probably it is more policy relevant, having been promoted by an agency of the United Nations which is dealing with development rather than science per se. And the main two directions of human security were saying freedom from fear and freedom from want. And those of you who were here 2 days back when Sean clearly said these are the two elements which are triggering human actions, reactions, and also atrocities, are exactly fear and want. So if we are free of these two, then we are having human security in a way. It is very interesting that the two elements. Now, Kofi Annan added living in dignity, and now the question is whether this human security, which came from the UN system, is it good for the UN to fit into its daily work? Can the UN work with it? And unfortunately, we have to see that in the Security Council itself, several permanent members do not even want to hear the term human security. There were some countries like Greece and other less, I would not say important countries, but less influential countries which embraced these ideas decades back. But in a structure which has Security Council and overruling veto rights, human security is probably not the name of the game which we can expect to prevail. Human security, while the term is the same, is entirely the opposite of securitization when you are upscaling a problem to be a security problem and giving it to the military or to the foreign or the secret service to deal with it. Now, of course, due to the human scale, the reference is unlikely to serve in an international, intergovernmental context. And when we are talking about turmoil in 2026, unfortunately, we have to look to the Middle East, we have to look to Ukraine, and we see that the turmoil which is in our back head is very atrocity-laden. Basically, we are talking and thinking of war. But of course, being human-centered, it is much more appealing than any other security paradigm. Now, so basically, when I started to deal with human security, this was the idea that to move from the traditional security paradigm from sovereign states, national political dimension, the question of peace, of war, into much more a human scale. And you see the UNDP defined 7 dimensions: political, environmental, economic, food, health, personal, community, security. You can say this is encompassing what potentially could be sustainable development, and the freedom from fear and freedom from want were the 2 original dimensions. And when 20 plus years ago we started the UNU Institute in Bonn, we wanted to have a chip from the cake, and we said it is freedom from impact from threats. So this is the kind of slogan. Now, it means also that we have to realize that we are not living in a wonderful world with only positive signs around. Even the big development, artificial intelligence, sorry that I spell it out in spite of our promise not to, has 2 sides. And it means that we have to realize that the security society, when we are eliminating all natural threats, hazards, and their quantification and put into the risk society, it is inevitable. We have to learn to live with risk. And now the main problem is that the core of risk is vulnerability, and we have a problem that we do not know, and we do not even want to know that we are very vulnerable. And this vulnerability is defined as a potential to be hurt by any unfamiliar event or situation which may occur. Of course, we can talk, and I will have examples from disasters of natural origin, but actually it is much more. It is everything could trigger that or vulnerability which is deep in us. We do not want to know about it. We believe it is going away, and it's just the opposite is happening. Vulnerability depends on impacting event. So if there is no event, your vulnerability won't be revealed. And it is only interesting if you are exposed to for what you are vulnerable. Now, this vulnerability means that this threat-independent core, which means that you may have a susceptibility, like, again, to some sickness, but if you are not exposed to bad air, your respiratory system may not collapse. But it means that we have to deal with this core, which is, of course, poor people, children, and old people are above more vulnerable, but they are not more vulnerable, they are more susceptible. Because the question is vulnerable to what? The susceptibility is the absolute word. And now these vulnerabilities can be mitigated by capacities, whatever it may be, whether we have an insurance or we know what could happen. And resilience, which is unfortunately in every mouse and in every aspect, is only one of these bloody capacities, not everything. And resilience is absorbing the heat and bouncing back, nothing more. Resistance would be that you are not even collapsing and bounces back. You are standing your man or woman. Okay, now, what are these features of this unknown weakness, vulnerability? It has different dimensions. We can be vulnerable socially, economically, environmentally, personally, of course. Or vulnerability increases, or economy and life is more and more dependent, for example, on one single source of energy, electricity. When I am hearing that all electromobility, then I say, okay, in a hospital you have emergency generators. If electricity collapses, the doctors can finish the operation. But if all the cars would be electric, how do you bring the patient into the hospital? So we are having and going toward an electricity energy system which has no backup. Then the technical progress may overshadow the inherent increase of vulnerability and project the image of unwarranted security. This is not the case, and I will show you how different outcomes could happen. And by ignoring our core vulnerability, we unwantedly weaken our potential chances to manage without significant losses any threat which is ahead. Let me show you, it was a study some 10 years ago. More than 400 counties in Germany were investigated for their social susceptibility. And of course, the result, it depends on which kind of indicators you choose. There were indicators of fragility, the ratio of elderly people above 64. So I would be very, very fragile in this indicator. Socioeconomic conditions, how much living space you have per inhabitant, what is the unemployment ratio and the educational type, and regional conditions, population density, housing type. And you see here is the social susceptibility map of Germany. You see that the former German Democratic Republic with its very old industries are very susceptible, but also the rural area, which used to be the hardcore industry. Sorry? Okay, but also the rural area, which used to be the industry and heartland of Germany, as mining collapsed, old people remained there, and it became more socially susceptible than it used to be. Now, let me show the result of two iconic disasters which occurred about 20 years ago. the Indian Ocean tsunami impact on Sri Lanka, and the impact of Hurricane Katrina on New Orleans. You see the dark blue line, it shows that the casualties were in New Orleans, mainly old Afro-American males living in single households who simply declined to move out because pets were not rescued. So they left their pets not behind, and they rather died with them. You see that in the same type of catastrophe like the Indian Ocean tsunami, which hit Sri Lanka 3 hours after the earthquake, had 40% of the dead were children, and very high level of medium and young age women perished with their children, mainly because they were wearing saris, and this was a condemnation to death, because with the saris you had no chance to swim or to survive a wave like a flood. It means that some social, cultural features could decide it. Men were very few died in Sri Lanka because they were already out on the sea fishing. Now, what is at risk? Risk is a product of this threat and or vulnerability. If we were not vulnerable and we would be able to deal with any threats, then the risk would be minimal. Both components could be mitigated, but none of them are known in advance. So we are really going into a dark future in a way that we do not know our own weaknesses, and we do not know what type of events may hit us. No one has ever contemplated an earthquake or like the Indian Ocean tsunami, which killed almost 500,000 people. Preparedness, estimating vulnerability with proxies, risk scenario analysis for potential futures may help, but they are not as sharp that you can do everything. I'm not going into detail into this figure, but it shows that the core of the problem is your vulnerability, which is only valid if you are exposed to the certain threat, and your capacities may mitigate it. So in order to have insurance, to learn about what could happen is already a big step forward. Let me come to a historical example. This is a postcard from 1910. In January 1910, Paris was inundated by the Seine River. This flood lasted 3 weeks, and it was such an event that postcards were printed, and people sent postcards out of the flooded capital city. And as Paris did not change much since 1910, you could see this is a Rue Diderot, Boulevard Diderot in Paris in 1910, where a new way of transportation was needed for 3 weeks. What is essential to say is that nothing happened in the catchment of the Seine River ever since. So if this flood would reoccur, it would still affect, as it affected 100 years ago, 600,000 people. However, the losses would be 6 times higher than they were in 1910, and you can imagine that this electricity-bound society, there won't be internet, there won't be mobile telephones, there won't be even heating, because those days they were heated with coal and wood, and now everything is gas, and you need this bloody electricity just to ignite your gas. Okay. Let me finish with this beautiful picture. This is also, even as you see, sent by the post. And you see that people were adapting to the situation. These are people who are working on some walkways created, and this is my hope, that we shall be innovative and collaborative to build our wooden walking bridges quick enough to cross the inundations of artificial intelligence and rogue states and their allies. Thank you very much for your attention.